Satoshi, very nice to be with you here today.
Thank you, Lars.
So, and it's nice to be able to sit and speak a bit because I've heard you play on several occasions, but never really had a chance to hear from you. I know that you have a very varied background, both in terms of instruments and in cultural backgrounds for different musics and so forth. So, I'm curious to know how you arrived at your personal musical expression, having such a varied background. What is it that makes one decide what to do when you have such a rich background and so many possibilities?
Okay, I mean, I started music playing like rock and roll, Beatles and British rock, American rock, just like any teenager in high school would do. And then very soon I really decided that this is what I want to do in my life. So I started looking for schools the excuse to come to the United States to study. And that time I was in Japan. You listen to radio shows, and that time the only way for you to have archive of things that you like was, of course, you can buy, go to LP, but as a student, I couldn't buy. I remember I could allow myself to buy maybe 2 or 3 at the most, like used CDs. LPs, like cheap ones. But other than that, I would listen to radio, and then whenever I hear something I like, I would just push record on the cassette. So by the end of the months or whatever, I have cassettes of all different kind of music, like one after the other. And sometimes it's like it starts in the middle, sometimes it starts. So it became like a kind of collage in the end. You will cut, and then all of a sudden, like some folk music from somewhere I have no idea will come out. And then all of a sudden it goes into classical music, and then going, like that. So it was kind of interesting tape collage without knowing that I was.
And the connecting factor was your interest.
The only way is because I like the sound, what I heard on the radio. And I hear the sound, I like it. And then I push the record. And then sometimes it's very short, because I only catch the last part of the music. And I would never know. Sometimes I would never know who or what. But it didn't matter. Then I had a collection of all this. So I accumulated all the sound that I like, the music that I like.
And you say sound, which I find very interesting because we think of this as music, organized sound.
Yeah.
But when you say sound, you are emphasizing a much wider spectrum than what music is, because music is a subsection of all the possibilities that we have in sound.
That's true. Also, you can think of that because of my ignorance to all different kinds of music, I couldn't categorize it, right? So I had to just realize that it's a sound I like. Yeah. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it is contemporary classical, or what part of the world this music is coming from. But just because of this kind of pure ignorance that you don't know what it is, sometimes it works that way because then you only tune to the sound of itself. It's an organization of sound that it attracts my attention.
So the stylistic differences which you then later were able to discern was
Exactly.
not an issue at that point.
Yeah, of course. Once you start learning, the first thing is to find out, research what it is. Who are they, and what part of the world or what kind of culture this music is from, and then you go through those. And I went through all. Once I got to America, of course, started jazz to Brazilian, African, then Middle Eastern, to all these researches were based on the curiosity that I just wanted to find out what it was that I found so fascinating. And then it went whole cycle. I think after I learned what it was, and then now I try to forget it, and then I try to come back to that feeling of sound that I liked, and it doesn't matter how I play it or how I approach it, but trying to get closer to what interests me and what attracts me as a sound.
Yeah. Because there's something very interesting about the way that you approach your own music. I hear it, and that's your use of space, which to me emphasizes the sound, exactly because it's often surrounded by space, which makes one's ear go very much into the closely listening to the surface of the sound.
Yeah, that's a very interesting. I think it's a great analogy because I think it comes from because I'm a performer of acoustic instruments. I play percussion and drums, and like any acoustic instruments, you have the attack, you have the sustain, then decay, and then in order to hear the decay, you have to let the sound resonate in the space or whatever. So when you play an instrument, you really try to hear that the resonance and then the sustain of it and the decay, all the things. And for me to really pay attention to that, like you said, you need a background of silence. Then you can really find out against the silence, and that's one of my main interests. Even when I'm playing just acoustic instruments, for me it is important to really let that resonant stay as long as it can, acoustically possible, and then you start something else.
I think it also characterizes your use of electronics, which is very delicate and it's not necessarily very electronic as such. It integrates very well into an acoustic way of listening, or the acoustic dimension of sound.
Yeah, that is also, I think it comes from that kind of tape, go back to the tape collage that I made. Without knowing it, it stayed with me for many years, that sound of cassette. And then this sound that you don't know what it is, but it has all kinds of sounds, and with this kind of very low quality cassette tape, but I learned to love that sound, and then I'm always, when I'm doing electronics, even I'm using computer and all these softwares, but I always look for that kind of something that I had access to, something like cassette tape, and then I hear like earlier electronic music, like music concrete or things like tape music. Something attracts me so much because of my upbringing, because of how I learned all this kind of music. So I kind of made that connection, and so what's in the tape, what's recorded, is something that is performance, different performances, different instrumentations. There's nothing of purely electronic about it. It was a kind of segments of life, like a music or sound of people talking or traffic, or I also did, like when I was in Colombia. I used to live in Colombia, and the only method I used was going around different villages and recording people. It was the same thing. It was cassette, and you will hear people's conversations and then play and all these things. After that became such an interesting sound to me by itself. It's not a music per se, but to be able to use that type of kind of sound, like one's own life's documentation, as a source to create a composition or improvisation, that interested me the most out of this technology. And then sampling, like a very quick sampling. From the beginning, I was very interested in sampling because of this recording. I always like to record. So when I'm performing, I like to record what I'm doing, and then maybe bring it back later, as a kind of building blocks to build my own improvisations. So that became my I restricted myself to only use that, and then leave the pure electronics sound to, there are so many other great players, and like yourself. I mean, sometimes I see people only who use those sounds, and then that is amazing things to me. But to me, that is my next level. For me, I really wanna master this kind of use of sampling and recorded materials, then try to incorporate that into my own performance. So that relates to basically what I do acoustically, and then kind of translating that into the electronical medium.
It's interesting that you mention the importance of your earliest experience with the recordings on the radio and it's the tape metaphor. In particular, when you have, as my question was earlier, such a varied and rich background in general, studied so many musics and different kinds. So, but sometimes it is like that. I guess that one makes a large journey to understand better one starting point and really understand that that's what one wants to use.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there are many people who discipline themselves to follow just one path. Like in New York, you have the jazz people and you have classical. You have people who follows that style and that tradition and that which is also I think valuable as an artist. I think there are two types of artists. I mean, generally speaking, the one that follows the tradition, which is already established and recognized as art form, of the humanities, and whatever it is, 2,000 years of, or 4,000 years of Indian music tradition, or a lot of Western classical music tradition, or whatever. You take those tradition, and then artist wants to follow that because it is proven. It is a proven form of art in our world. And then there is another type of artist who look at this and then always try to figure out different ways to achieve the same goal. Is there any other way? Is there any other way? Because once you develop yourself as an artist, you start to see where all the great arts, I think, end up in a kind of same places, that people look for that excellence, in their performance or in their composition, their work or their entire life works. They wanna get to that excellence, in their lifetime, and for that, I think all the artists are the same. We look for that. We strive for that goal. How we get there depends on our own personality, right? You follow the school, you follow the system because you know that if you follow it, with discipline, and you're gonna get there. All other people think like, is there any other way? Of the mountain pass that you can actually go to the top. It might take time because nobody has ever traveled that way, but doesn't matter. You know where you want to go, and then
you find the path as you go.
Exactly. Yeah.
So speaking of which, because where you are now and the way that you mentioned that you may have some ideas for other uses of electronics, but maybe I was curious of where you. What are your interests at this moment? Where you see that where is the path? In which direction is the path pointing for you at this moment?
Yeah. So for me, my main task for myself would be to kind of unite everything that I learned. I think it's I've been working as a sideman. I've been working for other composers, other producers and directors, and I learned a great deal from all these leaders, directors, and so now I have to unite everything that I know and I learned, whether it's acoustic music performance, or a little bit that I know about electronic music, and then see if I can come up with a project that represent myself, my past. I mean, one thing is to explain, where I come from, but if I can create something such as music that people will say, what is this? It's got this, it's got this, it's got this, it's got this. So it's almost like looking at the past of an artist. I think great art is like that.
Yeah.
You can actually see where this person has been. And, I mean, if you really into finding art.
So looking into the future is looking at your past.
I
And
think
if
so.
you- when you look at your past, you will understand the future that is embedded in there.
Definitely, yeah. I think that's what we always come back. You know, the first excitement that we had as an artist, as a musician, or and then you remember that moment, and then as you get older and as you get better in what you do, it seems like that's what you should. That's the sound I want to get. I want to produce because this is why I started everything.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Such a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, thank you.